How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm blessed, black, and highly favored. First of all, I want to say it's a privilege and an honor to speak with you. I have a few things I want to discuss with you today, but let's start with Chopra Global. What is that?
Chopra Global is a modern day healthcare company that combines cutting edge science with deep insights into the nature of our spirit or consciousness. And I am a founder of the company, but it includes many luminaries in the field of mind, body medicine, and personal transformation.
When you say you want to bring well-being to somebody, what does well-being look like to you?
On a personal level, well-being is a joyful, energetic body, a loving, compassionate heart, a reflective, alert mind, and lightness of being. On a collective level, it is meaning and purpose in life, but also in your career. It is social well-being, which means friends and family, community well-being, financial well-being, emotional well-being. They're all part of what we call total well-being, health. Health is related to the word healing, which is the return of the memory of wholeness. So well-being is not just physical, it's everything. That includes physical, emotional, spiritual, personal relationships, social interaction, environment, ecosystem, community, and everything that we call the biosphere, the web of existence, for which ultimately manifests as individuals. Individuals are part of an ecosystem, and unless the ecosystem is healthy, the individual is not going to be healthy.
You said healness, being healed is the return to the memory of wholeness?
Yes, healing is the return of the memory of wholeness. Wholeness means who you really are. You're not just a physical body that is manufacturing thoughts. You're the complexity of the universe as a physical body.
Explain that to me a little more, because I go to therapy every week, and I always say, I'm going through this process of healing, but I always wonder about that concept of wholeness, because can we ever truly be whole as human beings?
Yes. In fact, all fear, all anxiety, all suffering that we have as human beings is because of the false notion of the separate, fragmented ego identity. All suffering. That leads ultimately to clinging, grasping at experience, which is ephemeral, recoiling from experiences which are unpleasant, identifying with a false notion that you are an ego identity separate from the universe, and ultimately the fear of death, which comes from that. All existential suffering comes from the fragmented ego mind. To be whole is to actually go to the source of all experience. So perceptual experience is what we call the physical world. Mental experiences, sensations, images, feelings, thoughts. So what is the source of all of that? What is the source of thought? Well, in spiritual traditions, that's called the soul or the spirit. In cognitive science, it's called conscious agent. So there's a part of you that we call I am. Before I am Deepak Chopra. I am is who I am. Deepak Chopra is a process, an activity that starts with a fertilized ovum and ends with death. In between, there's an embryo, an infant, a child, a teenager, an adult, an older person, etc. Those are expressions, symbolic expressions of I am. So when you go to the source of thought, which is between every thought, or the source of perception, which is between every perception, then you are whole. You're holy and you're whole because you're in touch with your spirit.
Wow. How do I know what whole feels like, though, if I don't feel like I've ever been whole? Like, if I don't feel like I've ever been whole, I've never felt whole.
Okay, so it feels like what some athletes call peak experiences. If you talk to great athletes, if you got to talk to great artists, If you talk to great musicians, or poets, or dancers, they will tell you that they experience something called peak experience, where everything slows down, where there's loss of ego, where there's present moment awareness, where there is extreme joy, where there is no resistance, where there's no regrets, where there is the experience of flow. Now, as I said, artists experience that, athletes experience that, ballet dancers experience that, poets experience that, falling in love is a feeling of that, looking at your newborn baby is an experience like that, or just looking across the Grand Canyon and being struck with wonder and mystery and joy, or looking at the sky, the Milky Way galaxy. These are all moments of wholeness.
I wonder if that's
where you and what you see become one, the seer and the scenery, the lover and the beloved, the music and the musician, the dancer and the dance are one single process. That's wholeness.
I think I've been feeling that in the past 6 months. I wasn't calling it wholeness, though. I was calling it feeling worthy. I was finally feeling worthy.
And that's good.
Yeah.
Joy, extreme joy.
With Chopra Global, you launched a 21-day meditation and mindfulness experience in partnership with Oprah. And the tagline is hope in uncertain times. Why did you feel like that was necessary right now?
Well, because people are dealing, as I said earlier, with existential anxiety, a lot of emotional suffering, and also in the back of their mind, the fear of death. And so this kind of stress, which is the perception of stress, it causes inflammation in the body through the secretion of a hormone called adrenaline. It also raises on the levels of another hormone called cortisol, which compromises the immune system. So while we are trying to prevent the transmission of the virus, we're not doing anything to actually maximize our capacity for immune function and decreasing inflammation. A lot of studies that show that practices like meditation, deep breathing, emotional exchange of caring, affection, appreciation, attention, all of that actually decreases inflammation in the body and optimizes your immune function. So Oprah and I have been offering these meditations for the last many years. We've taught over 6 to 10 million people online meditation. So right now it's very, very important to help people manage their stress and decrease inflammation in the body. So that's why we're doing it. And anyone can download these by going to chopracentermeditation.com. And that's the meditation, Hope in Uncertain Times.
And why 21 days? That seems like a very specific number. Why 21 days?
It seems from various studies that if you do something every day for 21 days, you start to get into the habit, you start to build a habit. So anything, you exercise every day for 21 days, you change your diet and you stick to it for 21 days, you're more likely to then stick to it and becomes part of your routine.
I want to talk to you about the definition of an uncertain time, because you don't know it, but you really helped me. Because our good friend Debbie Brown, she put me onto your book, The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success.
Yes, she's great. Debbie is great.
Oh, amazing, the best. And she put me onto that book years ago, but I never read it until last month. And I read it right before the quarantine. And Law 6, the law of detachment, where you say letting go, leaning into the uncertainty of things. And it was this part in particular that really helped me, when you say the law of attachment accelerates the whole process of evolution. When you understand this law, you don't feel compelled to force solutions. When you force solutions on problems, you only create new problems. But when you put your attention on the uncertainty and you witness the uncertainty while you wait for the solution to emerge out of the chaos and confusion, then what emerges is something very fabulous and exciting. Why during this global pandemic that we're all facing should we lean into the uncertainty of it all?
First of all, it's very important to recognize that life is uncertain all the time. The only thing that we call certain is the past. It had happened. But from this second onwards, although we have statistical probabilities of, what the traffic is going to be, what the weather is going to be, what the modeling of the COVID virus is going to be. The fact is, we live and breathe and move in the unknown, always pretending that we are in the known, but actually we live in the unknown. And that's very good, because without the unknown, without unpredictability, there would be no creativity. If something is fixed, like a computer program, there's no creativity. The computers don't have creative solutions to any problems. They just model what all is already happening and create logical algorithms. Creativity comes from a deeper source, and it comes when we embrace the wisdom of uncertainty. So right now, in the midst of this pandemic, we not only need to understand that these times are even more uncertain than we thought, but we also need to understand that we cannot take existence for granted. We take existence for granted. And only when existence is threatened, then we go into this panic mode. We should be grateful for existence all the time. And if you're grateful for existence all the time, you will have access to abundance, creativity, and solutions. But if you panic because your existence is threatened, when in fact you were taking it for granted. I lost my grandparents, one of my grandparents, when I was 6 years old. And that started my spiritual journey, because I thought, everybody lived forever as a kid. And, I thought my grandparents would be there forever. And then one day he was there and he was not there. And I started my own spiritual journey, which basically meant I did not take existence for granted. And once you do that, and you're feeling grateful and you embrace uncertainty, you have the opportunity to reinvent your life. And this is the opportunity right now to reinvent our lives, to reinvent our body, resurrect our soul, and hopefully, because we are all in this together, move in the direction of a more peaceful, just, sustainable, healthier, and joyful world. We waste too much time as, being racist or egocentric or bigoted or prejudiced or ideological. We're always defending something, whether it's a religious ideology or a philosophical point of view or a political ideology, when in fact we share a common humanity. And once we understand that, then and only then we'll be able to actually figure out the meaning of existence. So right now people are going through grief. They've lost what they thought was normal. Okay, so they're lost. The grief is a loss. And when people feel grief, they first feel victimized. Why me? When in fact, it's not just me, it's everyone. Then they get angry. Then they get frustrated. Then they feel helpless. Then they resign. And finally, they accept. At that moment of acceptance, if they are careful and they observe that they are feeling calm in the acceptance of what is happening, then they find meaning. So this is the opportunity to find meaning for what is our life really about. Who are we beyond our personalities? What do we want from our existence? What is the meaning and purpose of our life? What are we grateful for? Once we start living these questions, life changes. We don't need to know the answers. We need to live the questions.
Wow. I think, that's what I'm doing. I'm leaning into the uncertainty of this whole situation. But I think it's a very hard concept to grasp, that concept about death, even though we all know we're going to die, because even though we're leaning into the uncertainty of life, it's the uncertainty of death that's just as scary too, because we don't know what's next.
No, but here's the point. If you participate in spiritual practice and you find the stillness in you that is beyond the mind, and you get in touch with your soul, spirit, whatever it is that is fundamental, you actually lose the fear of death, because you get in touch with that part of yourself that is not subject to death. There's a part of you that is not in time. The body is in time. The mind is in time. The emotions are in time. The experience of the world is in time. But what we call I am is not in time. I am was the same when I was a baby, when I was a child, when I was a teenager. There's something that hasn't changed, and that is sense of self. I am. So the more we get in touch with that sense of self, the less we fear death.
Yes, but I am a father and I am a husband. So I do think about how will my family be if I'm not here? Like I would be fine
Yes.
if it was just me. If it was
Yeah.
just
But
me,
see, you are a father, you're a husband, you were a son as well, a brother maybe, a teacher maybe, a performer maybe. You have your destiny is to play an infinity of roles, but you're not the roles you play. You know, you're like I play the role of a doctor, a teacher, a father, a son, a husband. Those are roles I play, and they're very important. But if I don't know who I really am, then even the roles fall apart. So
wow.
you have to get in touch that part of yourself, which is the only absolute non-changing part of yourself. Once you do that, you will be able to play all these roles without getting melodramatic or getting hysterical. You'll be creative in the roles you play and more loving, because you know that every role that you play is impermanent.
Wow.
That's a gift. To recognize the roles are impermanent is to pay attention to the sacredness of those roles.
Mm. I've been telling people this is a time for us to listen to God, because a lot of times we pray and we focus on being heard, but I feel like right now is the time for us to just listen. So with that said, what do you think the universe is trying to tell us right now?
This is beautiful what you said. Listen to God. See, prayer is speaking to God, and meditation is quietening the mind so you can listen to God. We need both to communicate. Right now, I'm listening to you, but I'm also speaking to you. And God being the source of all experience, we need to hear in stillness. What is the meaning of what's going on? You know, when I look at what's going on, and this is my personal take, so don't have to go with my point of view. But as we as humans have been forced to go into our cages right now through this seclusion, the biosphere existence is actually repairing itself. The
Yeah.
fish have returned to the canals in Venice. The birds are singing in Bangalore. The Himalayas can be seen from 100 miles away. The sky is clearer. People are even breathing better in polluted cities. You know, the sea, the ocean is blue. So something is happening. And that is existence is repairing itself by putting us out of commission for a little bit. Now, when we go back, we should go back with this respect for existence and not take it for granted.
Yeah, I wonder if I often wonder if humans are the parasites of the earth. And what if
Well,
they're
this is what evolutionary biologists tell us. They say of all the viruses, all the bugs, all the bacteria, and all the insects disappeared from our planet. In 5 years, life would stop on this planet. The
wow.
biosphere would finish. But if humans disappeared, life would flourish on this planet. So who's more important?
Yeah. Yes, I agree with you. I was talking to a friend the other day and we were talking about dominion, and they was like, you have dominion over the animals on the earth. And I said, no, I don't. I'm at one with them. I said, I feel like we should be at one with the earth. I shouldn't be feeling like I'm above a dog or above a cat or above the trees. Like I hate when they tear down trees to build houses and Starbucks. It's like we need the trees to coexist. We give them
Yeah.
something, they give us something.
See, if you put a plant in a vacuum, it dies. You put a rabbit in a vacuum, it dies. You put a plant and a rabbit together in a vacuum, they both live. So the trees are your lungs. The air is your breath. The waters, the sea, the ocean, the rivers are your circulation. The stars gave you the atoms that are now circulating in your body. So you have a personal body and you have a universal body. They're both equally yours.
Mm. I want to talk to you about trauma a little bit, because we have these conversations about brothers from the hood, sisters from the hood who are in these trauma-filled environments, and our whole lives we've experienced so much trauma, so much so that it's normal for us, and a lot of us don't even know we are hurting and we need some healing. So How do you recognize trauma and process trauma if you don't even realize that you have trauma?
The trauma doesn't feel good, and the first thing you feel dis-ease in your body. Whenever you have any kind of trauma, even a memory of trauma, it creates discomfort in your body, right? That's the definition of dis-ease. And if that dis-ease lasts a long time, it gives rise to dis-ease. First thing, when you feel trauma, is feel your body, embrace it by feeling the sensation in your body, because the sensation in your body is a trigger that is a reflection of trauma in your mind and your emotions. So just by feeling your body, feeling your breath, you kind of take your attention away from what you're experiencing in your mind to what you're experiencing in your body. That's the first step, to be aware of the trauma in your body by embracing it. Once you embrace it, then there are lots of techniques: meditation, mindful awareness, prayer, emotional bonding, emotional intelligence, emotional freedom, that we can embrace through various ways: self-reflection, transcendence, prayer, meditation, awareness of breath, awareness of body, awareness of mental space, awareness of relationship, and awareness of the fact that we are part of the universe. You said we are one with the universe. All that happens when we pay attention to the symbolic representations of our own self. What we call I am is my true self. I am Deepak Chopra is the manifestation of that symbolically through relationship. So ultimately, if you understand relationship, both with the self and with the other, that's the way to healing the trauma, because everything is relationship.
What if that trauma feels so normal, or you've made it, you got used to the pain?
Yeah, that leads to taking addiction as normal, abuse as normal, violence as normal, climate change as normal, eco-destruction as normal, and now the pandemic as normal. So, we get used to everything, even suffering, and that actually, suffering is the addiction to pain. That's all it is.
Suffering is the addiction to pain. Wow. For people sitting at home wanting to begin a journey in the spiritual growth or wealth consciousness, as you call it, where do they begin?
They begin with the practice, and the practice could be as simple as sitting down quietly, observing your breath, and asking 4 simple questions. You don't need to know the answers. 4 simple questions. Who am I? Am I the changing body? Am I the changing mind? Or am I something deeper that's experiencing the changing mind and body? Who am I? What do I really want? Do I want at the end of my life to say, I made a lot of money and went to work, spent all my time trying to achieve something? Or do I want at the end of my life to say, I was joyful, I was loving, I experienced the best experiences that a human being is capable of? Who am I? What do I want? What's the meaning and purpose of my life? What am I grateful for? Don't need to know the answers. Live those questions, you'll move into the answer. But then you go further. You download the meditation with me and Oprah. But you can do many other things, But you start with reflection. If you have never examined who you are, then your humanity is not complete.
How can you possibly have a wealth consciousness at a time like this? Like the economy's in the toilet, people are trying to figure out how to get money, they got bills to pay, rent, mortgages. Like, how can you not have a poverty consciousness at a time like this?
By being an exception to the rule. I was looking up recently some of the biggest things that have happened in civilization during times of depression and pandemic. So the AM radio came with the Great Depression and the pandemic 100 years ago, the influenza pandemic. Then came television in the 1950s. again, in times of crisis. In the 1990s, we had the internet, again, in times of crises, in times of, the stock market was falling. Today, we have artificial intelligence, VR, augmented reality, deep learning systems, holography. We have this technology where you and I can speak to the world right here, sitting in our living room. Right this moment, people are coming up with brilliant ideas for climate change, for reversal of extinct species, for repairing the ecosystem, for creating a more just and favorable society, for social justice, for economic justice. This is our opportunity. It would be a waste, a total waste to human creativity when we waste a crisis. No crisis should be wasted. And I can tell you, when this is over, the people who adapt, the people who are flexible, the people who are centered, the people who access their insight, inspiration, imagination, creativity, higher calling, and people who have a sense of the sacred, they will access the abundance. That is the natural attribute of existence. Look at one seed. It has the promise of thousands of forests. Every idea has the promise of creative solutions. We have to work together, though. There scientists are these days, social scientists are talking of something called emergence. Emergence happens when people have shared vision, where they complement their strengths and where they have emotional and spiritual bonding of some kind. This is what the communities need, by the way. This is what the African American community needs more than anything else. Shared vision, emotional and spiritual connection, complementing each other's strengths, creating our own communities of well-being and social and economic justice. This is the opportunity. And there are people who are doing this, by the way. I work with the African American community. I consider myself one of the colored people of the world, which is, in this country, seemingly a minority. But, I've worked with gang leaders in Queens who are now meditation teachers. We have created an amazing community in New York where people are actually sharing their ideas, have a shared vision, have become teachers, creating their own businesses, whether it's music or brands, all around collective shared vision. So we can change, and we should. This is the time for us to actually emerge into a new expression of ourselves. Remember, shared vision, emotional, spiritual bonding, complementing each other's strengths, creating a community, even online.
Why Black people in general? Why Black people specifically?
No,
I love that kind of talk, by the way.
Okay, no, I'll tell you. See, we are all victims of our history. I am the victim of British colonialism, or my ancestors were. All minority groups are victims of a racist, colonial, violent history, from slavery to subjugation to even religious thought. Most people think of God as a dead white male in the sky. I mean, who came up with that idea?
A white man?
Yeah, a white man. So, everybody worships a white God. I mean, it's so crazy how far we have been hypnotized and conditioned to a certain pattern of behavior. But now that we are becoming aware of that, it's up to us to resurrect our soul and create a new vision for humanity, not just for ourselves, starting with ourselves, but for all of humanity. The violent past is a history of white colonialism. It's an old paradigm. It's dying right now. And, with every death, there is resurrection. That's the true meaning, by the way, of death and resurrection. That an old system of domination dies and a new system of equality and caring and affection and tenderness and creativity emerges. And that's what we need right now.
I agree with you.
Not, I don't believe, by the way, in any form of violent retribution by anyone, including, the African American community. The African American community is now poised to bring in light instead of fighting darkness.
Yeah, I think that all forms of patriarchy are being dismantled. I think it started with men and women. I think it started with the genders, and now I think it's happening with the races. I think so anyway.
Excellent, absolutely. All these limited identities, gender, race, sex, these are all very limited identities. Our human identity is much bigger than that.
When you talk to people nowadays, what are the limiting beliefs that usually hold folks back? Like, what's the one or two things you see all the time now?
Well, the limiting beliefs is always I'm not good enough. I have to compete with others. I'm beneath so and so. I'm full of fear. I'm separate. In fact, if you start to, I would tell anyone who's listening or watching us right now, look into the mirror, look at your eyes, peer into your soul, and say to yourself, I'm beneath no one. I'm fearless, and I trust my own self. I don't depend on anyone for approval or flattery or criticism. That's the true sign of self-esteem. Fearless, beneath no one, and immune to criticism, even while responsive to feedback. That's what we need right now to create the new emergence.
You talk about like the meta-human. You think that's the next evolution of man?
Yeah, that's my book, my friend. That's my book, Meta Human. So meta means beyond, human means beyond the conditioned mind, the racist mind, the ethnocentric mind, the bigoted mind, the controlling mind, the addicted mind. That's the human mind right now. Fear and greed and the addiction to power, to sensation, and to approval is driving humanity through fear and greed to create all the disruption in the world. So meta-human is how do we go beyond that fearful mind to our source? The meta-human is the source of the process that we call human.
Wow. I also saw you on TMZ, and you said you have to show love to the Trumps of the world because you can't combat darkness with darkness. Martin Luther King Jr. said something like that as well. But it's so hard not to do. And if you saw the things like people say to me on social media, you would understand why it's so difficult to not respond with darkness when people throw darkness at you. But why is that so important?
Because then you recycle the darkness. When you engage with people who are dark, you recycle it. On the other hand, if you tell yourself this poor guy is doing the best he can from the state of awareness he's in, then you are ready to forgive, not because the person deserves forgiveness, but because you deserve peace.
Ooh, that's a bar.
Okay, so forgive the bigoted racists of the world, not because they deserve forgiveness, but you deserve peace.
Ooh. And showing love to him doesn't mean vote for him, right?
No, not at all. Love just means absence of judgment, period. And when you stop judging, your mind goes creative and silent and insightful. Otherwise, you get caught up in the judgment, and then you're defending yourself. So there's no need to defend. If you're sure of your own intimacy with your true being, every explanation becomes a defense.
Wow.
You don't have to explain yourself to anyone if you trust yourself, because every explanation is in one way an apology. It's a defense.
So it's kind of like you're showing through actions and deeds and not words and lip service?
That's it. What we call love in action. So love without action is irrelevant, but an action without love is meaningless. But when you have love and action, you can solve any problem.
Wow. I love in the 7 spiritual laws of success, you talk about dharma, which means purpose in life. And you say there's a talent, you have a skill, you have a talent you have that you can do better than anyone else on this planet. So I was wondering, like, if you're a rapper, a singer, a ball player, a radio personality, how does our talent serve a purpose to what's going on right now in this country, especially when a lot
Well,
of us can't even do those things?
you have the ability to make people happy. I mean, that's what rappers, musicians, and people who are engaged in the kinds of profession that you and I have the privilege of having, we can make a difference in people's lives right now by giving them attention, affection, appreciation, acceptance, and being a source of inspiration to them and a source of healing. So this is the opportunity. Dharma simply means your incarnational purpose for being here, the meaning you give to experience. Experience, if I look at this statue, which I'm holding right now, um, actually all it is a bunch of colors and appearances. But then I give meaning to it, it suddenly becomes a statue, divine feminine. So every experience you have is nothing other than a sensation, an image, a perception, a feeling, or a thought. When you give meaning to it, then you make it reality. So this is the time to ask yourself, if I had all the money in the world, all the time in the world, how would I express my unique self and who would benefit? If you can do that, you're living in Dharma.
What you mentioned the divine feminine right now, and that's a concept that I've been exploring. I feel like you have a sacred masculine and a divine feminine, and you need both to realize your sacred purpose. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, yes. Look at the qualities of the divine feminine. Mother, which means nurturing. Leadership of a different kind, a nurturing kind of leadership. A connection to nature, a connection to beauty, a connection to meaning, a connection to alchemy and healing, a connection to taking care of family and friends and relationships. So the divine feminine embodies beauty, intuition, nurturing, tenderness, caring, which is missing. Our patriarchal societies created a culture of violence because that's part of our evolutionary history. We had to, as hunter-gatherers, the male had to go and hunt and bring back food and take care of the family. But that hunting instinct made us predators. We became predators of the whole ecosystem of existence, of the whole biosphere. So that part of our evolution should be now past. It served its purpose. The new part of our evolution is the divine feminine. And when that is balanced with the divine masculine, which also means action, which means taking initiative, which means protecting people, when you combine that with the divine feminine, you have the emergence of a completely new way of life.
It's very hard to have that conversation with brothers though, because brothers will be like, "Oh man, you gay," or "Oh man, you turning into a girl," and you act like it's very hard to have that convo.
So let me tell you something. When I went to Queens, I went there almost 10 years ago. A woman took me there by the name of Erica Ford, and she was she's African American, and
Yeah,
she's
I know Erica.
okay. So she was taking care of all these gang leaders when they got into trouble. So with Erica, we actually started teaching some of the gang leaders to be yoga teachers and meditation teachers, and they were combining it with their rap and their music and all that. And initially, the reaction of the people in the hood, as you say, was, "These guys are gay. These guys are sissies. These guys are, they're off their rocker. What happened to them?" Okay, because before that they were gang leaders. Now they're teachers. Well, to make a long story short, those gang leaders are now the real leaders of these communities. They're creating businesses. They're creating their own brand. And even the police in Queens are coming to Erica Ford and my friends who were gang leaders, who are now the leaders, and the police and the community and the mayor are actually coming to their classes. So you can see how transformation occurs.
Absolutely. I only got a couple more questions. I know you have a podcast, a new podcast, and a film out.
Yes, the film is called the Mindfulness Movement, and one can download it on the mindfulnessmovement.com. It was executive produced with Jewel, who was homeless at one point, and because of her practice of mindfulness, she is where she is. So it gives a lot of examples of conquered their suffering, but also gives the science behind mindfulness and meditation. That's the film. The new podcast is called Now for Tomorrow, and it says, what can you do now to create a better tomorrow? Now means right now.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, my final question is, it goes back to the law of detachment and leaning into the uncertainty of it all. And, you know, I want you, do you get visions? Do you have dreams? Like, does God show you?
What I do is I ask myself questions before I go to sleep. And then at night, I have some kind of dream vision. And in the morning when I wake up, I have a download every day.
Because I want to know, with all of the problems, all the confusion, all of the chaos that this situation has caused, what will be the solutions that come out of it? What have you seen? Like, what has been your personal visions God has only shown you that you've seen? That's going
if we take this opportunity collectively, we can create a more peaceful, just, sustainable, healthier, and joyful world. We can be holy and we can be healed.
Simple and plain. Thank you very much, sir. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
It was fun. I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
All right. Blessings to you. Thank you.
God bless.